focus on energy matters. With the country's endless power cuts, some have argued that independent power producers could offer solutions. Mineral and Energy Minister Gwede Mantashe has announced 25 successful private bidders. However, the South African Federation of Trade Unions has objected to Mantashe's announcement, implying privatization by stealth. We speak now to Zwelinzima Vavi, Saftu's General Secretary, about what this may mean. Thank you very much, sir, for your time. Why are you dissatisfied with this announcement?
Well, there's a history to this, Dudu, and the history goes back to the fact that Eskom, in its current form, used to provide the cheapest electricity to the industry, to the household, in comparison to any other institution in the entire world. It was efficient. It employed thousands of workers, and year in and year out, it was rated and voted to be the best institution in the entire world. Then came in our guys with missions of handing every operation that used to be in the hand of the state, even during the apartheid, to the private sector. In 1997, the management of Eskom made a plea through a memorandum written to the then Deputy President and the cabinet to say to them, unless you can invest in the infrastructure which is ailing of Eskom, which was always an infrastructure which was designed to cater for a small minority of citizens, you're going to have to experience load shedding in 10 years. They ignored the memorandum because at that time they were driving a program of privatization. They didn't want to invest in something that they will later sell. They had thought that they will sell Eskom like Telkom to the highest bidder for a shilling. So they ignored that. And indeed, come 2002 first, we were hit with the first round of load shedding. And beyond that, they have stuck to their goal to dismantle, to unbundle, to hollow out Eskom, and whilst propping up all of these international institutions and to compete with it, and to use its mechanism to basically weaken its position as a sole supplier of cheap, competitive electricity if you compare Eskom to the entire world. The recent announcement by the minister is consistent with what the government have been seeking to achieve, which is to hollow out Eskom. The independent system market operator that was announced is now being undermined and hollowed out. This is the agenda of privatization. This is the agenda of ensuring that we hand over, or they hand over, energy provision to their friends in the IPP space. Most of them are coming from overseas, just like every other mining company exploiting the richness of this country is coming from elsewhere in the world.
Mr. Vavi, for the purpose of time, please, let me just interject. So you make the example of Telkom, right? When you compare it with what is happening with Eskom at the moment, some would very well argue that Telkom works and it works very well. So there is also a promise with the IPPs that there'll be 50 billion rand that will be injected into South Africa's economy. Projected jobs, 13,900. This still does not satisfy?
Exactly the good example we are picking up. Eskom used to employ 60,000 plus workers. Today it is employing about 11,000. Eskom was given a mandate through the Reconstruction and Development Program to ensure that every household has a telecommunication system, has a telephone. If you want to judge whether it has been successful, judge it according to that original mandate. Yes, of course, in between there would have been the introduction of the cell phone companies who came and who provided further telecommunication at a very high and huge, unaffordable price for the ordinary people. So Telkom may have been very, very successful, but the question is for which class in society? We are speaking unashamedly for the interest of the working class. We argue that if you hand over the provision of electricity energy to the private operators, very soon the poor, the marginalized, the unemployed, which in main are black people and the youth, are going to just see electricity in the farms, in the rich suburbs, flying above their head exactly in the same way that it used to happen during the apartheid.
Mr. Vavi, I hear you bemoan, the procurement process in terms of South Africans benefiting from this. If perhaps, the terms of engagement would say that we will give maybe not 40%, but we'll give 60%, of South African bidders priority here. Would that then satisfy you? What do you then believe needs to happen?
Exactly. That's a very important question again, because if you look at the white paper that was published way back in 1998, it promised that Eskom will have 70% of all the renewables programs provided in the country. Unfortunately, it is now the other way around. Eskom only recently, have been allowed to play in the renewable space. All along, renewables were handed over to the IPPs and to all of these conglomerates that are coming elsewhere in the world. That's what the problem is. When we're saying Eskom is being collapsed, is being disbanded, it is being undermined, we mean that it is being undermined so that the provision of this very important basic service can be handed over to those who are going to provide it to society for profits. And it is in the chasing of the profits that the ordinary people, those that are marginalized in the economy, those that are live in the second world, in the second country, that is South Africa, because we now have two countries in this economy. We have now introduced the economic apartheid and replacing it with the racial apartheid. The economic apartheid will keep the majority of our people in doldrums, marginalized, no electricity, no access to the most basic services, as the government is doing everything it can to hand these over to these private institutions to run them at a profit.
I have to please ask you this question as we wrap up. Some would very well argue that if you assess the state of state-owned entities in the country, are you then suggesting that they're all being collapsed if you're saying that Eskom is being deliberately collapsed because some are in dire straits? Is this an attempt to sabotage the country?
Noam Chomsky put this thing better than I do, or we do in South Africa. He says the standard technique of privatization is to defund, make sure things don't work, people get angry, then you hand it over to the private capital. We have no doubt that this is always the agenda of neoliberals inside the African National Congress and its alliance partners, to undermine the role of the state, to bring in corruption that have undermined the provision of basic services, whilst at the same time to position all of the state institutions to be handed over on a silver platter to their friends. And the next scandal you're going to see here is that you're going to have to check who are these 25 companies that are now being asked to provide electricity and energy of South Africa. You're going to read at some point in the newspaper that the families of the ministers, their wives, their daughters and cousins are going to be the shareholders in all of those companies. If that doesn't happen, come and cut this finger. This is where we are going.
That's where we're going to have to leave it. You have promised us a finger. We will be coming for it if needs be. Zwelinzima Vavi, the General Secretary of the South African Federation of Trade Unions. Thank you.